Did you know that every single day, somewhere in the world, someone picks up a carton in their hand? Coconut milk. Without ever thinking about where it came from, they pour it into their curry, or mix it into their coffee, or blend it into their smoothie. But what if I told you that the smooth milk you're using right now went through a stone-hard journey? Think about it. This coconut was once hanging from a tree 60 feet tall. Then a machine crushed it, one powerful enough to break bone. Then it was stripped of its fibers, dropped into boiling water, pressed under a hydraulic press. All in a single day. This story begins on an island in southern China, where millions of coconuts meet this same fate every year. This is Hainan Island, where coconuts have been cultivated for 2,000 years. And today, 90% of all the coconuts in China come from here. This isn't just a factory. It's an entire empire that turns millions of coconuts into smooth, creamy milk every single day, feeding a market that spans supermarket shelves, coffee shops, and kitchens far beyond China's borders. So let's see how this magic happens. Hainan Island is a beautiful place. Right by the sea, sandy soil, salty air. All of it is perfect for coconut trees. Here, in the sandy fields, there are thousands of acres where nothing but coconut trees can be seen, rows stretching out toward the horizon in every direction. The city of Wenchang alone produces half the province's crop, and its name has become almost synonymous with coconut farming itself. Drive through the countryside there and you'll see roadside stalls selling fresh coconut water, small family orchards passed down through generations, and trucks constantly moving between farms and processing plants. The industry here supports an enormous number of livelihoods. Entire families depend on the harvest season, and small towns have grown up around the rhythm of planting, climbing, and shipping. It's not just agriculture, it's a way of life shaped entirely around a single fruit. And the best part is that there's no such thing as cold weather here. Heat, rain, and dust all year round. That's all a coconut tree needs. A tree can live for 60 years and can carry dozens of coconuts at once, but it takes a full year for a single coconut to ripen. First it's green, then it turns a yellowish-brown color, and when you shake it, you hear the sloshing sound of water inside. Now it's ready. Some farmers climb the trees themselves, just a rope and bare feet, moving up 60 feet of smooth trunk with practiced ease. It's a skill passed down through families, one that looks almost effortless to watch but takes years to master safely. Others knock the coconuts down with long bamboo poles, working from the ground and letting the fruit drop to waiting nets below. In some places, trained monkeys are even used to pick coconuts, though this is far less common today than it once was. Either way, the coconuts endure everything. From here, they're not handled like flowers, but like stones. They're piled into nets, loaded onto trucks, and sent straight to the factory, sometimes traveling for hours along narrow island roads before they even reach the gate. Now when these coconuts arrive at the factory gate, the first job is inspection. Any that are cracked, rotten, or spoiled are pulled out immediately. Why? Because even a single bad coconut can ruin an entire batch. So this check allows no compromise. The coconuts that pass go into a large drum where brushes and powerful water jets clean them. Think of it as giving them a bath. Dirt, sand, bacteria, all removed, because if even a little grime is left behind, it can spoil the milk later. Now comes the hardest part, removing the thick, fibrous husk around the coconut. In the old days, farmers used to strike coconuts against a sharp stake and pull the husk off by hand. It was very slow. Now, factories have large machines with sharp blades and spinning parts that grip the coconut and strip the husk in 2 seconds. And you know what? That husk isn't wasted. It's called coir, and it has its own entire industry built around it. It becomes doormats, rope, mulch, even gardeners use it in place of soil because it holds moisture so well. Some factories sell their coir directly to furniture makers, who weave it into mattresses and seat cushions. Nothing about this fruit is treated as garbage. Every fiber has a buyer somewhere. Now we're left with a hard brown shell. This is what most people picture when they think of a coconut. To crack it open, the factory uses another large machine that applies pressure. Crack. The coconut splits into 2 halves. The water inside drains out through channels below. This water isn't wasted either. It's bottled and sold, or reused elsewhere. Both halves are then cut by hand. Skilled workers use specialized knives to separate the white flesh from the shell, moving with a speed that comes only from years of repetition. This job is still too difficult for machines because every coconut is shaped slightly differently. No two shells curve or crack in exactly the same way. A human hand does it better, adjusting instinctively to each irregular piece in a way no programmed blade can yet match. The empty shells that remain are dried out. They're then either processed further into activated charcoal or burned for energy. Now we have the white flesh, but it still has a brown skin on it. If that skin is left on, it gives the milk a slightly bitter taste. So the coconut goes into a machine with a sandy roller. The roller spins and scrapes the skin off. That's it, pure white, like snow. Now this white flesh goes into a hot water tank, very hot water, around 90 to 100 degrees. Just for a few minutes. Why? Because this heat does two things. First, it kills bacteria that could spoil the milk. Second, it softens the tiny cells inside the flesh, breaking down the cell walls just enough that the fat and liquid trapped inside can escape more easily during pressing. This allows more milk to be extracted later. This small step matters a lot, and factories that skip it or rush it end up with noticeably lower yields, meaning more coconuts wasted for the same amount of finished product. Then the white flesh goes into a very powerful grinder. 1 second, 2 seconds, done. Now it's a mushy substance, like wet snow. This is the ideal state for extracting the milk, fine enough that hot water can pass through it easily, while still coarse enough to be separated out again later as solid fiber. And now comes the magic. This mushy mixture is combined with hot water and fed into a massive machine. This machine is a press, so powerful it's hard for the human mind to grasp, capable of squeezing out liquid that would otherwise remain trapped in the pulp no matter how long you waited. It presses, and out the other side comes a beautiful white milk, thick and fragrant, carrying that unmistakable coconut aroma the moment it hits the air. But it's not over yet. The leftover fiber is mixed with water again and pressed a second time, and a third time too. Each time, the milk gets weaker because the fat content decreases. So the factory blends all three extractions together in the right ratio. There's a science to this. Coconut milk should contain between 5 and 20% fat, depending on whether it's destined to be a rich, restaurant-grade curry base or a lighter version meant for drinking straight from the carton. If it's too high in fat, it becomes too expensive to produce at scale. If it's too low, it becomes watery and loses the creaminess customers expect. Every batch is tested, a small sample is taken and checked in a lab, run through equipment that measures fat content down to a fraction of a percent. If it passes, it moves forward. If it doesn't, technicians adjust the blend ratio and test again until it's right. The fiber left over at the end is dried out. It becomes animal feed or fertilizer. Nothing goes to waste. At this stage, the milk still isn't quite right. It contains many tiny fibers left over from the grinding and pressing stages. Bits so small they're barely visible but still coarse enough to ruin the texture. So it needs to be filtered through one set of channels, then another, then a third, each one finer than the last, catching progressively smaller particles until almost nothing solid remains suspended in the liquid. What comes out at the end is beautiful. Perfectly smooth, with none of the grittiness that cheaper, less processed coconut milk sometimes has. Now, another step. Coconut milk naturally wants to separate. The fat rises to the top, the water sinks to the bottom, the same way it would if you left a glass of it sitting on your counter overnight. That's why the milk in your carton has a thick white layer at the top when opened. To fix this, factories use another machine called a homogenizer that forces the milk through extremely high-pressure jets, so forceful that the fat breaks down into tiny, uniform particles too small to rise and clump together again. Now everything stays blended together, even months later, sitting on a shelf in a warehouse halfway around the world. Then comes heating. And here there are two paths, and the choice depends entirely on where that carton is headed. One is light heating, around 80 degrees, a method sometimes called pasteurization. This kills bacteria and keeps the milk fresh, preserving more of its natural flavor, but it still needs refrigeration and must be consumed within a week, which limits how far it can realistically travel. The other path is very intense heating, 140 degrees, for just 2 seconds, a process known as ultra-high temperature treatment. This kills everything, including spores that ordinary pasteurization would miss. Now the milk can sit unrefrigerated for an entire year, which is exactly what makes long-distance export possible in the first place. Now the milk goes into a sealed room. Even the air here is sterile. A machine forms the cartons, fills them, and seals them, all within 2 seconds. If even the slightest thing goes wrong, the whole batch is ruined. So this step is handled with extreme care. Then the cartons are labeled, packed into boxes, stacked in warehouses, loaded onto trucks, all in a single day. And off to the world. But wait, some of the milk takes a different path. It's taken into a very cold room. Here, the milk is sprayed with extremely hot air, so intense that the water evaporates instantly into the air. What's left behind is a white powder. This is coconut milk powder. This powder is remarkable. It's light, not heavy, which makes it far cheaper to ship long distances. It doesn't need refrigeration, and it takes up a fraction of the space liquid milk would. Whenever you want it, just add a little water, and you have milk again. Bakeries love it because it's easy to measure and store. Instant noodle companies use it too, along with makers of protein powders and coffee creamers, looking for that same tropical richness without the shelf life headache. Now you might be wondering, does all of this really happen every single day? Yes. Thousands of cartons, millions, and a growing share of them don't stay in China at all. And coconut milk from Hainan now travels to grocery stores across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and North America, competing with long-established producers in Thailand and the Philippines. As global demand for plant-based dairy alternatives has grown, so has the pressure on Hainan's factories to scale up without cutting corners on quality. Speaking of the factory, it's worth pausing to note that this isn't something new. Coconut processing in Hainan began back in the 1950s. Small shops, manual labor, workers cracking shells by hand under thatched roofs with little more than knives and buckets. And now? Now it's massive. Machines, computers, everything. Entire production lines running around the clock with barely a human hand in sight for long stretches. And yet, human hands are still essential at certain stages. Sorting, deshelling, quality checks. Here, the human eye and hand are still better than any machine. A reminder that even in the most automated corners of modern food production, judgment and touch haven't been fully replaced. And there's one very serious part of this process. Samples are taken at every stage and tested in the lab. Is the fat content right? Any bacteria? Does it taste correct? Technicians also check color, smell, and consistency, since even a slight off note can signal a problem upstream that needs to be traced back and fixed. If anything is off, that entire batch is stopped, because thousands upon thousands of cartons could be shipped all over the world. One mistake could spoil it all, and no factory wants its name attached to a recall. So that's the story. Not a very long one really. 1 year on the tree, then a single day, 1 truck ride, 1 factory, and then out into the world. Nothing goes to waste. Not the shell, not the fiber. Just a new kind of milk. A beautiful, white, smooth milk. Next time you pour coconut milk into your curry, think about this. That milk came from a very difficult journey. From a hard, stone-like coconut, hauled off a tree, cracked, boiled, pressed, and tested over and over again before it ever reached your kitchen. But now, this is what it's become. Smooth, creamy, wonderful. That's the magic. And somewhere on Hainan Island right now, another truckload of coconuts is arriving at another factory gate, ready to begin the exact same journey all over again.